Welcome back to Hot Rod High School. We're going to continue our series on starting and charging system voltage drop testing. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the negative side of the starting circuit and performing a voltage drop test on that. Now, typically I would want to get the meter hookup as close to the starter motor as is possible when performing this test. So actually connecting it to the frame of the starter motor would be the best possible place to hook up. Today, for our purposes in this test, I'm going to go ahead and hook up my terminal just on a negative connection that is bolted to the engine. So for this test, the red terminal on our voltmeter is going to be hooked up to this ground connection right here. Oh, it's actually behind the meter, so maybe move it so you guys can see it. So right there, there's a spot where the wires bolt to the engine of the vehicle. That's a good ground connection, and that's where we're going to hook up that red probe. The black probe is going to go onto the negative terminal on the battery. So black probe right here, red one right here. They're now hooked up so that we can perform the negative voltage drop test. We said that we had in the last video for the positive side, you could have a voltage drop reading to go as high as 0.5 volts, that's a very high reading. On the negative side, 0.2 is the absolute maximum that you should be seeing when performing this test. Okay, so let's go inside the vehicle. We're going to remove the fuse that controls the fuel pump so that we can perform this test. So I'm taking a look at our interior fuse panel cover, and we can see once again that fuse number 19 is the one that goes to the fuel pump. So we'll go inside the passenger compartment and remove that fuse. So the fuse panel is labeled with the numbers for each fuse. So I'm just going to look in there, find fuse number 19, which we know runs the fuel pump, and remove it so that when we crank the engine over, the car will not start up so that we can perform the test. And now with the fuel pump disabled, we can perform the test. Okay, I have the voltmeter propped up on the windshield so I can see it from inside the vehicle. And I'm just going to crank the engine over and watch that reading. And remembering always, never crank the engine over more than 15 seconds to avoid damaging any of the components in the starting system. So here we go. Getting a little bit of a high reading there. And so I'm going to go and check my connections and perform that test one more time just to make sure that we aren't dealing with a false reading with a resistance from my test leads not being hooked up tight enough. Okay, so I tightened up our connection there, wedged in the probe a little bit better. So let's see if we get a better reading or if there might be too much resistance on the ground side of this circuit. Okay, so now we are getting a reading closer to 0.12, 0.13, which is much better, much more acceptable for the ground side of the starting circuit. Okay, and that is testing voltage drop on the ground side of the starting circuit.